The observation deck was crowded with beings from across the galaxy. Counselor Veltrick stood at the front window, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. His yellow eyes watched the frozen moon below with the tired expression of someone who had seen this too many times before. "Another species wishes to take the ice test," announced Kira, her insectoid body clicking as she moved closer to the window. "Humans, they call themselves," Veltrick sighed. "How many does that make?"
48 attempts total, Kira replied.
47 failures. Ambassador Thrain floated nearby, his gaseous form swirling inside his containment suit. "The ice test has never been passed. Why do these newcomers think they will be different?" The ice test was simple in concept but brutal in execution. Any species wanting to join the Interstellar Coalition had to prove they could survive. The test dropped candidates on a frozen moon called Epsilon 9 for 72 hours. The temperature there reached -40 degrees. Winds howled strong enough to knock over most creatures. Snow fell so thick that visibility dropped to nothing. Each species received the same basic equipment: a communication device, a small medical kit, basic rations for 3 days, and standard survival tools. No advanced technology was allowed. No heating devices. No pre-made shelter. The test measured something deeper than technology. It measured adaptability, mental strength, and the will to survive when everything seemed impossible. "The last species lasted 14 hours, Veltrick said quietly. "They were covered in thick fur, built for cold climates on their homeworld. Even they could not survive." On another part of the station, Jiwan checked his equipment one more time. He was a human engineer, tall and lean with dark hair cut short. His fingers moved quickly through the survival kit, inventorying each item with practiced efficiency. "Nervous?" asked Hyun, standing beside him. She was shorter than Jiwan, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. As a biologist, she had studied survival patterns across hundreds of Earth species. Now she would test that knowledge herself. "Not nervous," Jiwan said with a small smile. "Focused." Yuna, the head of the human delegation, entered the preparation room. Her presence commanded respect without effort. She had negotiated for months just to get humanity this chance. "The coalition observers are ready. Are you two prepared?" "We are," Yun confirmed. Yuna studied them both for a long moment. 47 species have failed this test. The coalition expects us to fail too. They see us as soft, too dependent on our technology. Show them what humans can do. Jiwan nodded. "We will." Daeun, the mission controller, appeared on a screen mounted to the wall. She would monitor everything from the station. "Transport ship is ready. Once you land, you will have 72 hours. If you need emergency extraction, use the red button on your communicator. But using it means automatic failure, and humanity will have to wait another decade to reapply." "Understood," said Hyun. "We won't need it." The transport ship was small and cold. Jiwan and Hyun sat in silence as it descended toward the frozen moon. Through the viewport, they could see Epsilon 9 growing larger. It was a world of white and gray with no color anywhere. Ice sheets stretched to every horizon. Mountains of frozen water jutted into a pale sky. On the observation deck, more beings had gathered to watch. This was entertainment for some, a grim reminder for others. Species from warm worlds, cold worlds, water worlds, and gas giants all stood together. They watched the human transport ship land on the ice. "What do we know about these humans?" asked a tall creature with 4 arms. Kira consulted her data pad. "They come from a planet with extreme environmental variation. Temperatures range from -80 to +50 degrees in different regions. They have survived in deserts, jungles, mountains, and frozen tundra." "Interesting," Veltrix admitted. "But knowing about cold and surviving it are very different things." The transport ship touched down. Its doors opened. Wind immediately screamed into the cabin, carrying snow and ice. The temperature inside the ship dropped rapidly. Jiwan stepped out first. The cold hit him like a physical force. His breath turned to fog instantly. Snow stung his face. But he did not hesitate. Hyun followed close behind, her eyes already scanning the landscape. On the station, Minho watched with other members of the human delegation. As their cultural liaison, he knew what the others did not. He knew why Jiwan smiled as he looked at the frozen wasteland. He knew why Hyun seemed calm instead of terrified. "They look too relaxed," observed Ambassador Thrain. "Do they not understand the danger?" Minho spoke carefully. "On our world, humans have lived in places like this for thousands of years. We have many names for snow, many types of ice. We learned not just to survive the cold, but to use it. Use it. Veltrix turned to look at the human. What does that mean? Watch, Minho said simply. The transport ship lifted off, leaving Jiwon and Hyun alone on the ice. Wind howled around them. Snow began falling heavier. In 1 hour, the storm would arrive. A massive weather system that previous species had barely lasted through. Jiwon pulled out a small device and took readings. Temperature, wind speed, snow density. Hyun knelt down and examined the ice beneath them. She pressed her gloved hand against it, testing its hardness. This will work, she said, standing up. Better than work, Jiwon replied. This is perfect. On the station, Suho translated the human conversation for the aliens. As a xenoanthropologist, his job was to explain human behavior. But even he seemed excited now. Perfect? Kira repeated. They call this perfect? They are assessing the ice as a resource, Suho explained. Not as an enemy. Veltrix watched more closely now. The humans were not huddling together for warmth like previous species. They were not trying to dig a hole to hide in. Instead, they were walking around, studying the ground, examining the snow. Jiwon stopped at a place where the snow had been compressed by wind. It was hard, almost solid. He knelt down and pulled out a tool from his kit. It was a simple knife, standard issue, but the way he looked at the snow, then at the knife, then back at the snow, made Veltrix uneasy. What is he planning? The counselor asked. No one answered because no one knew. Hyun joined Jiwon at the compressed snow. They spoke quietly to each other, their words picked up by communicators but making little sense to the aliens listening. The grain looks good, Hyun said. Dense enough, Jiwon agreed. Wind packed for at least a week. We should start before the storm hits. Agreed. Then Jiwon did something that made every observer go silent. He began cutting into the ice, not chipping at it randomly, but cutting it with precision. Long straight lines. He carved a rectangular block from the compressed snow. What is he doing? Ambassador Thrain asked. Hyun helped Jiwon lift the ice block. It was heavy, perhaps 20 kilograms. They set it aside carefully. Then Jiwon cut another block. Same size, same shape? Daeun's voice came over the communicator. All stations confirm visual. The humans are cutting blocks from the ice, but why? Kira asked. What purpose does this serve? Jiwon stood up, brushing snow from his knees. He looked at the blocks, then at the sky where storm clouds gathered. The wind was getting stronger. The temperature was dropping. Any other species would be seeking shelter now, trying to conserve body heat. Instead, Jiwon smiled. It was a genuine smile, full of confidence. He looked up at the sky, then at the blocks of ice, then at Hyun. This reminds me of home in winter, he said. The translator in his suit carried his words to every being on the station. The observers looked at each other in confusion. Home? This frozen death trap reminded him of home. Hyun laughed softly and began cutting her own block. Just like home, she agreed. Veltrix felt something he had not felt in years of administering this test. Curiosity mixed with something else, something that might have been hope. The storm was coming, but the humans were not running from it. They were building something. The snow fell harder now. Wind screamed across the frozen plain, carrying ice crystals that could cut exposed skin. On the observation deck, beings from 40 different worlds watched in fascination as the two humans continued their strange work. Jiwon had cut 12 blocks of ice. Each one was rectangular, about half a meter long and 20 centimeters thick. They sat in a neat row, waiting. Hyun worked beside him, cutting more blocks with steady, practiced movements. They have been out there for 90 minutes, Daeun reported from Mission Control. Her voice was calm but proud. Core temperature stable. No signs of hypothermia. Veltrix could not look away from the screen. They should be freezing by now. The last species was showing severe distress at this point. The humans are moving constantly, Kira observed. Cutting the ice requires physical effort. The effort generates body heat. But that cannot last, Ambassador Thrain said. Eventually they will tire. Eventually the cold will win. Suho, standing with the human delegation, smiled slightly. You are thinking like someone who fights against the cold. Humans learned long ago that you cannot fight nature and win. You must work with it instead. Work with it how? Veltrix demanded. How do you work with something trying to kill you? Keep watching, Suho said. On the surface, Jiwon stood and stretched his back. 20 blocks now sat ready. The storm was very close. Lightning flashed in the distance, strange and eerie in the cold air. Thunder rolled across the ice. Ready to start? Jiwon asked. Hyun nodded. Let us build. They moved to a flat area where the ice beneath was solid and level. Jiwon placed the first block down. Then he placed a second block next to it, but not straight. He angled it slightly inward. Then a third block also angled inward. The observers watched in silence as a pattern emerged. The blocks formed a circle, each one tilted toward the center. It looked like the beginning of a dome. They are building a structure, Kira said with surprise, using the ice itself. Impossible, said a being with blue crystalline skin. Ice is what kills you here. You cannot use your enemy as protection. But the humans continued. Jiwon started a second layer of blocks, placing each one on top of the first layer. The dome grew taller. Hyun cut more blocks, adjusting their size as needed. The blocks on top needed to be smaller to maintain the curve. Minho spoke to the assembled aliens. On Earth, in the far northern regions, humans developed this technique thousands of years ago. We call it an igloo. It is a house made entirely from snow and ice. That makes no sense, Veltrick said flatly. How can frozen water protect you from freezing? The blocks trap air inside, Minho explained. Air is a good insulator. The ice walls block the wind completely. Inside the structure, the temperature will be much warmer than outside, even without any heat source. The aliens muttered among themselves. Some were skeptical. Others were fascinated. All of them continued watching. The storm hit with full force. Wind speeds increased to dangerous levels. Snow became so thick that visibility dropped to almost nothing. The cameras on the station struggled to maintain a clear picture, but the humans did not stop working. They moved with quiet confidence, each knowing their role. Jiwon placed blocks. Hyun cut more and passed them over. Their movements were synchronized, efficient, born from practice. The dome grew higher. Now it was taller than Jiwon's head. The curve was beautiful, almost mathematical in its precision. Each block supported the others. The weight distributed evenly across the entire structure. Remarkable, Kira said softly. Her compound eyes analyzed every angle. The engineering is quite elegant, but will it stand? Asked another observer. The wind is getting stronger. As if to answer, a massive gust of wind slammed into the ice plane. It would have knocked down most beings. The cameras shook. Snow blasted across the surface. The igloo did not move. The dome held firm, its curved shape deflecting the wind around it instead of fighting against it. Hyun ducked inside the structure to arrange the interior while Jiwon finished the top. Only a small hole remained at the peak. Jiwon carefully placed the final block, a specially shaped piece that locked everything together. Structure complete, Daeun announced. Total construction time, 2 hours and 17 minutes. Jiwon carved a low entrance tunnel into the side of the dome. The tunnel sloped upward slightly. Hyun explained over the communicator why this mattered, knowing the aliens were listening. Cold air is heavy, she said. It sinks. The entrance is below the floor level inside. Cold air flows out through the entrance while warm air stays trapped inside the dome. Simple physics. Jiwon crawled through the entrance tunnel. Hyun followed. Once inside, they pulled their packs in after them and sealed the entrance with a smaller ice block, leaving just enough space for ventilation. The camera feeds switched to their helmet cameras. The observers could now see inside the igloo. It was small, maybe 3 meters across. Both humans could sit comfortably with room for their equipment. More importantly, the wind noise had disappeared. Inside the igloo, everything was quiet. Jiwon pulled out a small thermometer from his pack. Outside temperature is minus 42 degrees, he reported. Inside temperature is... He paused, checking the reading. Minus 8 degrees, the observers reacted with shock. A difference of 34 degrees, achieved with nothing but blocks of ice. That is impossible, Ambassador Thrain said. That is physics, Suho corrected gently. Ice is actually a good insulator. The trapped air between the snow crystals prevents heat transfer. Combined with blocking the wind, the temperature inside becomes survivable. Hyun removed her outer gloves. Her hands were still covered by thin inner gloves, but the fact that she could remove any layer at all shocked the observers. She began organizing their supplies. We have food for 3 days, she said. Water will not be a problem. We have ice everywhere. She smiled at her own joke. Jiwon was studying the interior walls. He touched them carefully, checking their stability. The structure is solid. As long as the temperature stays below freezing, it will hold. If anything, it will get stronger as moisture in the air freezes and bonds the blocks together. Daeun's voice came through the communicator. Vital signs are excellent. Heart rate normal. Body temperature normal. How do you feel? Comfortable, Jiwan replied. Much better than outside. On the observation deck, Veltrix sat down heavily. In 47 previous attempts, he had never seen anything like this. Other species had tried to dig holes in the ice. They had tried to huddle in small caves. They had tried to use their equipment to build windbreaks. None had thought to use the ice itself as building material. None had understood that the enemy could become the solution. They have been on the surface for less than 3 hours, Kira noted. Already they have shelter that appears more effective than some technological solutions. The storm will last at least 12 more hours, Veltrix said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Let us see how they fare when the temperature drops further tonight. Inside the igloo, Hyun unwrapped a ration bar and took a bite. Not bad for day one, she said. Jiwon nodded. He was looking at their supplies with a thoughtful expression. We have fuel tablets in the emergency kit. Small ones meant for boiling water in survival situations. You are thinking of making fire, Hyun said. It was not a question. The interior temperature is survivable but not comfortable, Jiwon said. If we could raise it another 10 degrees, we could remove more layers. Conserve energy. Rest properly, fire inside an ice structure, Hyun mused. The observers will think we have gone crazy. Maybe, Jiwon agreed. But it will work. The Inuit did it for centuries. Small controlled fire for heat and cooking. The ice does not melt because the outside cold keeps it frozen. The slightly melted interior surface actually refreezes and makes the structure stronger. Hyun considered this. We would need to create a platform to keep the fire off the ice floor. And ensure proper ventilation so we do not suffocate from smoke. Already planned, Jiwon said, pulling out their small metal cookpot. We can use this as a fire platform. Elevated on ice blocks. The ventilation hole at the top will draw smoke upward. On the station, Suho was translating the human conversation. The aliens listened with growing disbelief. Fire? Veltrix said. They want to make fire inside their ice house. It seems they do, Kira confirmed. That will destroy the structure, Ambassador Thrain declared. The heat will melt it, Minho shook his head. The heat will be small and controlled. The extreme cold outside will keep the walls frozen. This is another ancient human technique. Veltrix stared at the screen. The humans were arranging ice blocks inside their shelter, building a small platform. They were actually going to attempt this. This is either genius, he said slowly, or we are about to watch them make a fatal mistake. Jiwan pulled out the fuel tablets and the magnesium fire starter from his emergency kit. He looked at Hyun and grinned. Ready to shock some aliens? He asked. Hyun smiled back. Always. The observation deck had grown more crowded. Word had spread throughout the station that something unusual was happening with the ice test. Beings from across the galaxy gathered to watch the humans do the impossible. Inside the igloo, Jiwan arranged small ice blocks in a square pattern. He placed their metal cookpot on top, creating a raised platform. This would keep the fire from directly touching the ice floor. Hyun checked the ventilation hole at the top of the dome, making sure it was the right size. Airflow looks good, she reported. Smoke will rise and exit naturally. Jiwan unwrapped a fuel tablet. It was small, designed for emergency situations. Meant to boil water for drinking or warm a meal. He placed it on the metal surface of the cookpot along with some dried material from their rations. Veltrix leaned closer to his screen. This is madness. The moment fire touches ice, the structure will weaken and collapse. Perhaps, Kira said. But look at their confidence. They have done this before, or know of others who have. Suho spoke to the assembled crowd. On Earth, in the Arctic regions, humans have used fire inside ice shelters for over 4,000 years. The trick is understanding the balance between heat and cold. Jiwan held the magnesium fire starter. It was a simple tool, just a rod of magnesium and a striker, but in the right hands it could create fire in any condition. He scraped the striker along the rod. Sparks flew, bright and hot. The sparks landed on the fuel tablet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small flame flickered to life. Orange light filled the igloo, dancing across the white ice walls. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the fire grew stronger. The fuel tablet burned with a steady, controlled flame. Jiwan added a second tablet, increasing the heat slightly. Interior temperature rising, Dayon reported from Mission Control. Currently -5 degrees and climbing. The structure should be melting, Ambassador Thrain said. Why is it not melting? Minyo explained patiently. The outside temperature is -42 degrees. That extreme cold keeps the outer layers of ice frozen solid. Inside, only the surface closest to the fire warms slightly. A tiny amount of melting occurs, but then that water refreezes almost immediately, actually making the walls stronger. Hyun held her hands near the small fire, warming them. Temperature is comfortable now, she said with satisfaction. We can remove our outer layers. Both humans took off their heavy coats. They sat in just their base layers, comfortable and relaxed. The firelight made their faces glow. They looked like people camping on a pleasant evening, not fighting for survival in a deadly environment. On the station, a being with 6 legs spoke up. My species comes from a cold world. We have thick fur and can survive -20 degrees, but we would still be suffering on that moon. How are these hairless creatures sitting comfortably in -40? Because they are not in -40, Kira pointed out. They are in approximately 0 degrees now. They created their own microclimate. The interior temperature had indeed reached 0. The small fire, combined with the insulation of the ice walls and the trapped air, had created a warm pocket. Condensation formed on the walls nearest the fire, then froze again, creating a thin layer of smooth ice that reflected the firelight beautifully. Jiwon pulled out their water container. It was empty. He looked at Hyun and smiled. We have plenty of ice. Indeed we do, she agreed. Jiwon took a piece of ice from the wall. He held it in his gloved hand for a moment, examining it. Then he placed it in the metal cook pot directly over the fire. The ice began to melt immediately, turning to water. They are creating drinking water, Kira observed, from the very thing that was meant to kill them. Veltrix said nothing. He simply watched, his old assumptions crumbling like the ice in that pot. The water boiled. Steam rose through the ventilation hole. Jiwon carefully poured the hot water into their drinking containers, leaving them to cool slightly. While they waited, Hyun pulled out their food rations. We can heat these over the fire, she said. Warm food will be good for morale. They prepared a simple meal. Ration packs warmed over the fire, hot water to drink. Inside their ice dome, sheltered from the deadly storm outside, the humans ate dinner. They talked quietly, planning for the next 2 days. The observers watched this domestic scene with growing amazement. This was not survival. This was comfortable living. The storm is at its peak now, Dayon reported. Wind speeds have reached 80 kilometers per hour. Temperature has dropped to -45 degrees. Visibility is 0. Inside the igloo, the humans barely noticed. The wind howled outside, but inside they heard only a soft whisper. The temperature remained steady near 0. The fire burned warm and bright. Jun took a drink of warm water and sighed with contentment. This is actually quite pleasant, he said. Hyun laughed. Better than that training exercise in Norway, remember? When our heated tent broke and we had to improvise? Much better, Jiwon agreed. That snow was too soft for a proper igloo. This is perfect. Their casual conversation carried through the communicators to the station. The aliens listened to humans discussing past experiences in frozen environments, training exercises, mountain climbing trips, winter camping adventures. A tall being with crystalline skin spoke in a confused tone. They go to frozen places voluntarily, for recreation. Humans are strange, Suho said with a smile. We find challenge enjoyable. Overcoming difficult environments is something we do for fun, not just survival. The hours passed. The storm continued its assault on the frozen moon, but inside the igloo time moved differently. The humans rested, took turns maintaining the fire, and monitored their equipment. They were calm, efficient, conserving their energy for the days ahead. Veltrix had not left his post. He watched through the night as the humans slept in shifts. One would sleep while the other tended the fire and kept watch. Then they would switch. It was a rhythm born from experience and trust. They are treating this like a routine camping trip, Kira observed, not a life or death test. Because for them it is routine, Veltrix said quietly. Their world made them this way, forced them to adapt to every extreme. Heat and cold, wet and dry, mountain and sea. They learned to survive everywhere. Morning came, though it was hard to tell on the frozen moon. The storm had passed during the night. Jiwon emerged from the igloo first, crawling through the entrance tunnel. He stood and stretched, looking at the landscape with fresh eyes. The world outside was transformed. Fresh snow covered everything in smooth, pristine white. The sky was clear, showing stars that never set. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Yoon joined him outside. "Day 2, she said. "Day 2, Jiwon confirmed. 48 hours to go." They inspected their igloo from the outside. It had survived the storm perfectly. Snow had drifted against one side, actually adding extra insulation. The dome was solid, strong, unchanged. Diane's voice came through their communicators. "How are you feeling? Any issues to report?" "No issues," Jiwon replied. "We are well rested and comfortable." The structure performed exactly as expected. On the observation deck, beings were talking excitedly among themselves. The humans had not just survived the worst of the storm, they had slept through it in comfort. This had never happened before in 47 previous attempts. Yuna, head of the human delegation, allowed herself a small smile. Her people had proven themselves, but she knew the test was not over. 2 more days remained and anything could happen. Veltrix turned away from the screen for the first time in hours. He looked at the other observers, then at the humans in the delegation. "I have administered the ice test for 12 years, he said slowly. "I have seen many species attempt it. Strong species naturally adapted to cold. All of them failed." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "These humans have no fur, no thick skin, no natural protection against cold. Yet they sit in comfort while a storm that killed 47 other species rages outside. They did this not with advanced technology but with blocks of ice and a small fire." Kira nodded. "It is remarkable. They saw a resource where others saw only danger." Inside the igloo, Hyun was checking their supplies. Food sufficient for 3 days. Fuel tablets still available. Water unlimited thanks to the ice around them. She pulled out a small packet she had saved for a special occasion. "Jiwon," she said with a grin. "Look what I found." He looked at the packet in her hand. His eyes widened. "Is that tea?" "Tea," Hyun confirmed. "Emergency rations include beverage packets. I saved it for when we had hot water and time to enjoy it," Jiwon laughed. "You are brilliant. Let us make tea." They returned inside the igloo. The fire still burned, warm and welcoming. Hyun boiled more water while Jiwon added fuel to keep the flame steady. When the water was ready, she added the tea packet and stirred. The smell of tea filled the small space. It was a smell of civilization, of culture, of home. 2 humans sat in an ice dome on a frozen moon, sipping hot tea while a hostile universe tried to kill them. And they smiled. On the station, Daeun reported what she was seeing. "Confirm visual. The humans are drinking tea." The observation deck went silent. Then someone started laughing. It was a strange, bubbling sound from a being whose species Veltrix did not recognize. But soon others joined in. Not mocking laughter, but amazed, delighted laughter. These humans had not just survived. They had made tea. Hour 36 of the ice test arrived with troubling news. Daeun's voice carried urgency through the communicators. "Weather alert. A second storm system is approaching your position. This one is larger than the first. Wind speeds estimated at 120 kilometers per hour. Temperature will drop to -50 degrees. Arrival time, 4 hours. Inside the igloo, Jiwon and Hyun exchanged glances. Neither looked worried. "The structure will hold," Jiwon said confidently. "We built it strong." "Agreed," Hyun replied. "We should gather extra ice blocks, though. We might need to reinforce the entrance if snow drifts become too deep." On the observation deck, the news of the second storm created a stir. Previous species had barely survived the first storm. None had faced a second one because they had already called for emergency extraction by that point. Veltrix studied the weather data with concern. This storm would kill most species even with full technological support. "The humans have only ice and fire. Should we warn them?" asked a young assistant. "Recommend they prepare for emergency extraction." "They already know," Kira pointed out. "They heard the same weather report we did. Notice their reaction. They are not afraid." Indeed, the humans had calmly gone outside to cut more ice blocks. They worked together with practiced efficiency, adding to their supplies. They reinforced the entrance tunnel and checked the ventilation hole. Everything was methodical, thorough, professional. Yuna watched from the human delegation area with pride. Her people were representing humanity well, but an idea had been forming in her mind, something unprecedented. Counselor Veltrix, she said, approaching the administrator. I would like to make a request. The scaled being turned to face her. What kind of request? The storm approaching is severe. It would have killed any previous test taker. But my people have shelter, warmth, and supplies. They are comfortable and safe. Yes, Veltrix agreed cautiously. What is your point? Yuna took a breath. I request permission to bring observers down to the surface, to experience human shelter firsthand. The observation deck went completely silent. Every being turned to stare at the human delegation head. The idea was shocking, revolutionary, possibly insane. You want to bring observers into the test zone? Veltrix asked slowly. During a deadly storm? My people have proven they can survive, Yuna said. More than survive. They are comfortable. An igloo can be expanded. It can shelter more than 2 people. I believe sharing this experience would help the Coalition understand humanity better than any report. Ambassador Thrane's gaseous form swirled in agitation. This is highly irregular. The test is meant to be completed alone. The rules say candidates must survive for 72 hours with basic equipment, Yuna pointed out. They say nothing about not having visitors. Kira's compound eyes focused on Yuna with interest. You would share your survival technique with others? Even though you are still being tested? That is what humans do, Yuna said simply. We share knowledge. We help others, especially when we have warmth and they have cold. Veltrix considered this carefully. It went against all protocol. But then again, everything about this test had gone against expectations. Why not continue the trend? I will volunteer, he said suddenly. I have administered this test for 12 years. I have never set foot on that moon. Perhaps it is time I understood what I have been asking species to endure. I will also go, Kira announced. For scientific observation purposes. Ambassador Thrane hesitated, then his containment suit bobbed in agreement. And I have doubted the humans. It seems only fair that I witness their achievement directly. 2 other species representatives volunteered. Within minutes, a small group had formed. Dion coordinated with Jiwon and Hyun, explaining the situation. Jiwon listened, then laughed with genuine delight. Visitors? In the middle of a storm? That is very human of you, Yuna. Yes, send them down. We will expand the igloo and make room. Will you have enough supplies? Daeun asked. We will share what we have, Hyun said. That is also very human. The transport ship descended through increasing winds. Inside, Veltrix felt something he had not experienced in many years. Nervousness. He was going to the place that had killed 47 species worth of candidates. His survival now depended on human ingenuity. The ship landed near the igloo. The doors opened and cold rushed in like a living thing. Veltrix stepped out onto the ice and immediately understood why so many had failed. The cold was not just temperature. It was a force that wanted to steal every bit of heat from your body. Wind cut through his protective suit. Ice crystals stung his scales, then he saw the igloo. It looked so simple. Just a dome of ice blocks. Yet inside that dome were 2 humans who had made tea in comfort while others died. Jiwon emerged from the entrance tunnel, grinning. Welcome to our home. Please come inside. The storm is almost here. One by one, the visitors crawled through the entrance tunnel. Veltrix went last. The tunnel was tight, undignified. But when he emerged inside the dome, he stopped in amazement. It was warm. Not just warmer than outside. Actually warm. A small fire burned in the center on a raised platform. The ice walls glowed with reflected firelight. There was room for everyone to sit comfortably. Please sit, Hyun said, gesturing to arranged ice blocks that served as benches. We expanded the structure while waiting for you. It is not fancy, but it is effective. The visitors sat, stunned into silence. Outside, the second storm hit with devastating force. Wind screamed across the frozen moon. The temperature plummeted to -50 degrees. Snow fell so thick that the world disappeared into white chaos. Inside the igloo, they heard only a soft whisper of wind. This is incredible, Kira said softly. The temperature in here must be at least 0 degrees. +2, actually, Jiwon said, checking his thermometer. The extra body heat from our guest helps. Veltrix touched the ice wall with one scaled hand. It was solid, frozen, yet it protected them from the very cold it was made from. The contradiction felt like a riddle solved. How did your species discover this technique? Necessity, Hyun replied. Humans lived in Arctic regions for thousands of years. No trees for wood, no caves for shelter. Only ice and snow. So we learned to use what we had. But it seems so obvious now, Ambassador Thrain said from within his containment suit. Use the environment itself. Why did no one else think of this? Because your species never had to, Jiwan said gently. Your worlds did not force you to adapt to every extreme. You evolved in one type of environment, then developed technology to handle others. Humans evolved in many environments. Africa's heat, Asia's mountains, Europe's forests, Arctic ice. We had to adapt or die, long before we had any technology. Hyun pulled out their remaining supplies. We have tea, she announced, and some ration bars we can share. Not much, but enough for everyone to have something warm to drink. She boiled ice water over the fire. The simple act of making tea while a killer storm raged outside felt surreal to the visitors. Yet here they were, aliens from across the galaxy sitting in an ice house while humans served them hot beverages. This is tea from Earth? Kira asked, accepting a cup of warm liquid. Yes, Hyun confirmed. Tea is important to human culture. We drink it in good times and bad times. It connects us to each other and to home. Veltrix accepted his cup carefully. The warm container felt good in his cold hands. He sipped cautiously. The tea was simple, not particularly fancy, but it was hot and it was offered with genuine hospitality. You invited us here, he said slowly. Into your test. You shared your shelter and your supplies. Why? Jiwan and Hyun looked at each other, having a silent conversation. Then Jiwan spoke. On Earth, in the harshest environments, humans learned something important. Survival is not just about being strong as an individual. It is about being strong as a community. When you have shelter and someone else needs it, you share. When you have warmth and someone else is cold, you invite them in. That is how humans survived when we were weak and the world was dangerous. We had no claws or fangs, Hyun added. No thick fur or armor. We had only each other. So we learned to cooperate, to share, to build communities. That made us stronger than any individual could ever be. The storm howled outside, but inside the igloo, beings from different worlds sat together in warmth. They drank tea made from melted ice. They shared stories of their homeworlds, their cultures, their fears and hopes. Ambassador Thrain spoke quietly. I doubted you. I thought you would fail like the others. I was wrong. Many doubted us. Yuna's voice came through the communicator from the station. That is acceptable. We are new to the galaxy, unknown, but now you see us clearly. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest or most advanced. But we adapt. We build. We share. That is our strength. The hours passed slowly. The storm continued its assault, but it could not touch them. The igloo stood firm. The fire burned warm. The tea lasted just long enough for everyone to have a second cup. Veltrix found himself thinking about the 47 failed attempts he had witnessed. Species that thought survival meant fighting alone against the cold. They had huddled in isolation, trying to conserve their individual heat until it ran out. The humans had done the opposite. They had built a home and invited others inside. The ice test has been the same for over a century, Veltrix said, speaking his thoughts aloud.